we're kind of like, let's talk about what we are saying and who we're saying it to. And let's dig into the actual worship that we're bringing to the Lord when we sing. And so in that regards, we are very impartial. There's many types of genres that we plan to get into. And I think you'd be surprised at what our opinions are on that music. And we're back with another episode of Hymnpartial, where we talk all things church music. I'm Monet Funke.
And I'm Cara Devereaux.
And today we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different.
Ooh.
Today we're actually going to break our format, not that we have a really strict one. We're going to break our format a little bit to give you a background of who we are and what we really wanted to accomplish when we set out to start this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. But before we get into it, what are some things you want to know about the podcast? Leave us a comment below and let us know. This really helps us to get to know you all better, and we're really keen to do that. It helps us to help you if we know the sort of things you're interested in, what you want us to talk about. So yeah, leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts, so that you never miss another episode.
It's very true. So, Cara, I know we've been talking about this episode for a really long time, and the point here is not to have us just have a chat. That's very easy for us to do.
We do that anyway.
Yeah, this could be hours if that was the case. But the point is to sort of give some insight as to why you and I want to start this podcast in the first place, and what our goals are, and I guess for those who are currently listening or might listen in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I tell you, where are we? What are we in? Yeah, we're like halfway through the year. Yeah. So, maybe a month or two ago, I had no expectations that I would be doing this. You probably had even less than no expectations. So, it's a bit of one of those weird stories. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to tell it. So, a few months ago, as she said...
She's going to tell it from her side.
Yes, I'll tell you this. You guys are getting the inside scoop of how this actually happened for me. But a few months ago, Cara sent me a text late at night, and she was asking...
That late, was it?
It was night. I was in my bed.
Okay.
So, it was late. About that. Maybe that's when I read it. But she was like, funny question. How do you think it would be? This is her voice in my head. She said... How do you think it would be if I started a podcast discussing the backgrounds of hymns? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. And so, my husband, because it was night, my husband was there, and he's actually super enthusiastic about it as well.
He's the secret third member of Hymnpartial.
Yes, he definitely, he is genuinely, he does our graphics and everything. He's a huge fan. So Cara asked me if this was a good idea, and I was like, yes, of course. And then do you remember what you asked me next?
So this is interesting. This is how Monet remembers this, because I remember texting her, do you think there's an audience for a podcast about hymns? And I thought I was being super subtle. I was like, do you think there's an audience for that? And she was like, yeah. So I text her back and goes, you want to do it? And to my surprise, she texted me back and was like, yes. And I was like, oh, okay, we're doing a podcast now.
Yeah, that's right. You asked if I would co-host the show with you, which I accepted, of course, because here we are. But I was really excited, like enthusiastic, because I actually studied film and sound 100 years ago, and when I was back in uni, and that's a skill that I hadn't really used in a long time. So I was really just happy to help from a technical standpoint. Though, let's be honest, technology has moved on a lot since I studied it a decade ago. But I think I was quite intimidated to be a co-host in a sense, because as we started to get into the how and the why of this podcast, I realized that I'm pretty average I'm a layman. I'm a lay woman. I don't know what the proper term is, but I'm no historian. I have no particular knowledge in church history. I didn't go to seminary. So really on paper, I have no qualifications to tell others about something historical, especially related to the church.
You've been to church for years though, so it's not like you've got years of experience singing hymns.
So basically what you're saying is that I am ancient history. So
no, I just mean like,
I'm kidding.
You sung hymns, so yeah. I mean, it's a start, right?
Yeah, it's a start. It's a start. But I think like one of the things that we talked about when we were, because I mean, this kind of sparked off like days and weeks of conversations and just going back and forth. Well, we really wanted to do it right, even if it wasn't, perfect. We wanted to approach it right in terms of what are our clear goals, what are our clear audience, what is, what is our voice. And I think one of the things that I was really encouraged by just during our conversations is, we really wanted to approach it in a sense where I am an average person. You are slightly above average.
Average person.
No. And really, that's the type of people who we want to reach, to encourage folks that you don't have to be a historian. You can look into these things for yourself, and we will happily help. And we want to talk about these things because we think they're important for the church.
Definitely. And I think the other thing is that when you listen to a podcast or watch videos and it's some pro that's like, he's got 6 PhDs and he's written about 12 books and he's telling you about church history and you're just like, oh, wow, I could never do that. And so to have 2 people that, just sit in the pews on a Sunday morning but love hymns and church music is a good thing, I think, because, we're doing these podcasts and we're telling you all this stuff, but actually you could easily go and find some of this stuff out and, be learning. So we're as much a springboard for you as we are like a thing. Yeah,
we're as much a springboard for you guys as we are teaching ourselves. That's
what I was trying to say.
That's okay. That's why we're here. That's why I'm the co-host.
This is why I wanted to co-host. I was like, I'm completely inarticulate and boring on my own.
Untrue. So I think it's important that just folks get to know us a little bit better. So I know a lot about you, but I feel like probably not even as much as I should know. But in terms of, music and church music, kind of what is your background and how did you end up where you are today?
It's a long story.
Tell us.
Settle in. So, my parents were not from a Christian background. They were Christians when they got married. And I think if we ever do like a February 14th podcast, we should get them to tell their story because it's like something out of a Hallmark movie, but more stressful. That's tangent. My parents were not from Christian families, so they didn't really kind of have a Christian background. They didn't really know what they were doing. So they were just kind of like, well, we'll go to church where they preach the Bible because that seems like a good idea.
Yes.
So I started life in a Methodist church. Interesting. Yeah. You don't need my whole life story, never mind. So when we moved up to Scotland, because we moved around a lot when I was younger, we moved up to Scotland, we joined a Baptist church. It was not a great Baptist church. It was the kind where they'd quote people like Rick Warren back in the early 2000s when he was a big deal. Yeah. The music in that church was often very lively. They had a band, they had like praise rota and things, and they had a projector. Ooh,
fancy.
Yeah. But they also had an electric organ, and I used to hate it. I used to be like, oh, we're singing the boring stuff. Sounds like Dracula playing away in his castle. Like, I needed to slap.
She regrets those comments now, don't worry.
I do now. I have a lot more appreciation for older music now. Because a lot of the modern stuff we sang was pretty vapid. It was, early to mid 2000s, and contemporary music at that point was not good.
I do know what you mean.
So when I was 10 or 11, we used to, in the summer holidays, because they didn't have Sunday school and stuff, which I hated anyway, we'd visit other churches. just to kind of get to know people and to hear other preachers and things. So in the 6 weeks of summer holidays, we just visit some other churches. My mum had visited one fairly recently, and she really liked it because for their children's talk, they read the Bible, and then the pastor explained that bit of Bible to the children. And she was like, oh, we should go there. And we went, and that Sunday he'd started, I was going to say an episode, a series on Hebrews.
Nice.
And it was just the introductory one. And we were kind of like, oh, that's interesting. We should come back next week and see what this is about. And we kept doing that and kept doing that and kept doing that. And eventually we just didn't go back to the other church.
I see.
Yeah. But they were very different. They had one of those old electric organs. They sang out of the old Christian hymns. I think it's like the 1985 version.
This is the little red book.
Yeah, the one, it's not in print anymore.
But I see it in a lot of churches, so I guess that tells you something about the kind of churches that we visit.
It's a good hymn book. It's pretty
great.
solid.
Yeah.
You get large print ones for those of you who can't. Yeah, so it's a predecessor to New Christian Hymns.
Christian hymns.
Is it just Christian hymns?
I think the red book is called New Christian Hymns. No?
I was thinking the yellow and white one.
Yeah. It's just called Christian hymns.
Oh, it's the predecessor to the yellow and white Christian hymns.
All right.
So not as modern and stuff.
I see.
And coming from the old Baptist church, I really, really, really struggled with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm someone who loves music. And that was a hard thing for me.
Were you already playing instruments at that point in your life?
Yes.
Which ones were you playing?
At that point, when I was 10, I would have been playing just the fiddle.
Nice. Fiddle is violin. Just
violin. Except better.
I don't know. When I hear the word fiddle, I think of like swing your partner round and round. Like really kind of country western.
So my favourite is like Cape Breton and East Coast, Scottish East Coast style.
Nice.
So when people talk about Celtic music, I'm just like, oh, you have no idea how broad that is.
She's like, she becomes a music snob for that one phrase.
It's just that one thing. I don't care about classical music. I'm just like, Celtic music, are you including like French Canadian in that?
Yeah.
I love French Canadian. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult transition from contemporary with a worship band to an old organ, and these hymn books that sometimes stuck to your hand when you were trying to hold them.
Lovely.
But I kind of began to read the hymns, like actually read what I was singing. And although I didn't understand a lot of it, that the stuff that I did understand, I really liked.
Yeah.
And it was at that point I began to memorize stuff, like not strictly deliberately, but it was a thing. Like I would sing things and I would find that I was actually remembering them. So at that point I learned an appreciation for hymns. I don't know whether to go on or just leave that there.
I think it's interesting to know how you got into kind of playing music, because I know that's kind of like a unique thing that we should have in common.
That's not the point at which I began to play church music.
Okay.
Because that church did not believe that anything other than sort of a keyboard was appropriate.
So how did you get into playing church music? When did that even spark?
So when I was, I'm trying to think if I was 16 or 17. I was 17 when I went to uni, and I was part of a church, and they were like, oh, you play the violin, come play for us. Which was not appropriate because I wasn't a member. That's a whole other issue.
We're gonna get in trouble for that comment. We're gonna get yelled at for that.
Yeah, but my pastor's gonna fist bump me, so that's fine.
So will mine, but my pastor's also my husband.
It's fine. So yeah, I wasn't a member, but I would play.
Yeah.
And they were actually quite a good blend of older hymns and more contemporary music. And I loved it, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then when I graduated, I moved down to Edinburgh, and my now pastor, when he found out I could play the violin, he was like, great, this is great, come and play in church. So the piano or the guitar, we have a guitar sometimes, we'll play, and I'll just play the tune. It's nothing fancy. It's not like, when you see the Gettys and the violins doing all this like twiddly stuff, none of that. It's just kind of like, just play the tune, and it helps the people to sing
it
because it gives you a clear melody line. So that's how I ended up playing in church.
Wow. So fairly recently then, like the last, 5-6 years then?
4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been playing the fiddle since I was about, I think 8 or 9, and I was 20 before I played it in church.
Wow. That is pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I've actually gotten the pleasure to play with you once, and you were playing the cello actually with me.
I prefer the cello. It's so much more mellow.
It's a beautiful instrument, and you'll know why. So thanks for sharing that. I think it's important. It makes it sound very self-important. I think it's interesting to know our background a little bit because, yes, we are laymen and lay women. I actually don't even know what is the appropriate.
Lame there, and I was like, it's true. I'm lame.
We're lay people, and as in we're not official ministry people or anything like that, and we aren't scholars, and
we're not in churches that have like worship. And leading the music is not an official position. Yeah. I think that's important to say because in the States, you have some of the churches have like paid positions or someone's a music leader and stuff. We don't have that in Scottish churches. A lot of it's just someone can play the keys and that'll do us.
And there's no like judgment there in terms of, it just happens to be the way things are. And
because we're tiny. We're just like someone with skills.
Yeah. My history is a lot different, but I'm also just a tiny bit older than her. But you don't know how much because of my youthful skin. We look like we could be like 1 or 2 years apart. Anyways, I digress, and that was a shameless call for praise. But so music actually has been a huge part of my life, like since I was as old as I can remember, as young as I can remember. I can't think of what the phrase is now. But since I was a kid, basically, I've been singing since, again, as early as I can remember. And in fact, there was a point when I was a kid, I was pretty sure I was going to be a pop star. I was like dreaming of joining like American Idol and like my life.
Imagine you singing in the shower.
Like... Yeah. There was a lot of shower singing, and I promise you it wasn't terrible. A lot of talent shows, a lot of things like that when I was growing up. So music was very big, and music's a big part of my family as well. My older brother is a R&B singer and had some success both in Los Angeles, where we are from, and also in
I did not know
Germany. That. Yeah. I'll tell you the name of his. It's not a Christian band, so
she'll tell me off camera.
I'll tell her off camera. But so music was always a big part. I mean, my dad, he's really into percussion, and he has actually a very lovely singing voice as well. My mom has a very lovely singing voice. Music is just a huge part of my life in its own category, just music. And so when I got into middle school, which is about age 11, I'm just trying to compare it. I don't know what year that is here.
That would be sort of first year of high school, I think, but I get confused because I was the wrong age. So
yes, that's okay. We'll talk about it. So yes, when I was in middle school, I accidentally joined an orchestra. Basically, I had signed up for one elective, and that elective closed in between registration and the first day of school. And so the registrar just put us all into orchestra. And I remember my orchestra teacher saying, I know a lot of you don't want to be here. My goal is to try to convince you guys not to drop the class by the end of the class. And she totally convinced me, and I started to play the cello, which is something we have in common, though definitely this has been a long time since I last played the cello, and I'm really, really rubbish at it now. But I did play it for 3 years. I learned how to read music. I learned like some music theory. And actually, when I went from middle school to high school, so about age 14, instead of keeping with orchestra, which I was pretty sure I was going to do, I ended up, and I can't even tell you why, joining a classical choir instead. So I just kind of lifted like what I had learned from orchestra and also just a history of singing and kind of put those things together. And then I kind of stuck with choir for the next 8 years. So I stuck with that in high school and in university. So that's kind of my music background. But I was saved in university. So when I went off to university, I was saved, and the church that I was saved in and stayed in until I moved to Scotland, they mostly stuck with contemporary worship songs. And sort of early on in my walk, my good friends there and brothers and sisters in Christ, they were like, oh, you can sing. You should sing on the worship team, because I did go to a church where there was a full team, and not necessarily a paid position, but it was kind of an elder's wife kind of led it. And I was kind of her backup singer, and I learned how to play the shaker, which the little egg shaker for if anybody from
Can you learn that though?
I mean, it takes skill. If you ask some people on our old team, they did not have that skill. So I want to say I was taught well. So I did that pretty much for my whole time at this church, and I was there for like 8 years. So I was always on the worship team. And for while I was on that worship team in university, still singing in the choir, the woman who led it for a part of the time, she was kind of like, I looked up to her, and she played the guitar. So I wanted to learn how to play the guitar so that I could, this is like the Lord's planning, right? I was like, I want to learn how to play the guitar so I could play sometimes when she's not there. And I did kind of cover for her in some bits when she needed to be off. But I learned how to play the guitar. Very basic, not very good. If you were like, Monet, we're going to move this to the key of whatever, I'd be like, sorry, you just tell me where to put the capo, because I don't know what you're talking about. So all the music theory that I learned when I was in middle school just is out the window. It's gone. So yeah, and basically that was kind of my exposure to music and the church. Mostly contemporary songs, a few hymns. But then when I moved to Scotland, like, it's kind of like my whole world got flipped upside down. It's
a different world here in so many ways.
It really is, because the music here is, well, it's not to say that Scottish churches don't sing contemporary songs. They definitely do. It's not to say that Scottish churches don't have bands with multiple instruments. They definitely do. That is a total, like, that's not the shock. It just so happens that the very first church we went to, when we moved to Scotland, we were up in Aberdeen, and that church had a full band. But they mostly sung, like, it was kind of a mix. It was a mix of hymns that either had been modernized or had become quite popular. Some of the hymns we talk about, Be Thou My Vision and stuff, songs that people would know, but they were kind of older hymns.
I think in Scotland, I don't know if it's part of our heritage, particularly with the Presbyterians being a lot more conservative here. So you get Presbyterians that are Psalms only. And I don't know if that kind of strong, very conservative influence has meant that Scottish churches are that bit more wary of contemporary music. I'm not sure.
Maybe it might be, and because we tend to be, both, Reformed Baptist women, and we tend to be in those circles of just kind of Reformed in general, churches. I think my exposure to more conservative culture within the church was kind of like expanded quite a lot, and so that definitely had a lot of influence on the music. So it went from, us having, I think my church in California, which, by the way, my church in California actually has moved towards singing more hymns since I've left. And it's because of groups like Sovereign Grace and stuff who've actually put out more arrangements of old hymns, but with new melody, new songs. And some old songs as well, old arrangements as well, I should say. But to go from that, where I think at one point we had 1 or 2 guitars, depending on the day, 4 singers, a piano, a djembe player, sometimes an actual drum set, sometimes an electric bass. I mean, we could be anywhere from 3 to 8 people on a Sunday to now. That's why I talk about God's planning. Now at our small, just recently planted church, it is me and my guitar and my voice, and I don't have a mic, and it's just a completely different thing. And I am really thankful to the Lord that he gave me this desire for music, because now it's being used quite practically in our church plant, which we're officially not a plant anymore, but, you know, we're small and we're just, you know, so we don't have a lot of musical skill, and
you don't really have a lot of people, full stop.
No, yeah.
Like, to draw musical skill from.
Exactly.
So, but it can be like that in Scotland, like particularly among Reformed Baptists. Some of our churches are really small, and by really small, I mean that like we've known churches with 4 members, and 2 of those are the pastor and his wife. So, yeah.
Most definitely. So that's actually good. I think there's some overlap, but not a lot. It's a lot different background.
The interesting thing, there's a few things that I didn't mention. One is that I nearly gave up music when I was in primary school.
Really?
Yes, because I found classical music very kind of claustrophobic and restrictive, and it just didn't interest me. But I had this teacher who was not a music teacher. He was a random supply teacher who was just always there, and his name was Mr. Mason, and he played what he called the squeeze box. It was the accordion.
Oh, nice.
And he used to compose his own music. Like, a few years ago, actually, he emailed me a song called Cara's Clogs that he'd written for me. It was really cute. But he used to, like...
Cara's what now?
Clogs.
So, like your shoes?
Like, yeah.
Okay.
It's just a little jig.
Okay.
But he used to write all these Scottish tunes, and he'd be like, would you want to try it? Do you want to play it? And I'd play it with him, and he'd hammer away at the piano, or he'd have his squeeze box, and we'd play together. And it was basically the thing that made me realise I don't have to be classically trained to love music.
Yeah.
But then, skipping ahead, I really struggled in my teenage years because I was in a church where if it's not hymns and it's not classical music, then basically you shouldn't really be listening to it. So as someone who loved music, I had this struggle of I don't want to sin, and I don't want to, you know, be listening to stuff that I shouldn't be listening to. But I didn't understand what was wrong with listening to things like Lecrae or I'm trying to think who was kind of some of the more big ones at the time, Third Day, bands like that. Yeah. And in the end, I just got over it and was like, well, it's a matter of conviction. It's fine for me to listen to this stuff. But that was a massive struggle for me.
Yeah. It is. It's a tough thing. And I hope we always talk about our hopes and dreams, which we will talk more about, but I do hope it's something that we can start to flesh out with this podcast, because very different backgrounds in terms of music, in terms of salvation and everything like that. But here we are, common ground. And actually that kind of segues into the next question, which is the name of our podcast. Why Hymnpartial? Now, I'm happy to tackle this, but I kind of want you to tackle it first, and then I'll kind of piggyback off of what you say. Am I allowed
to say what I said before the episode?
Maybe not. I don't know.
So we were trying to think of a good title. I love puns a lot. So we were trying to think up all these punny titles, and we came up with quite a few. And Monet's husband vetoed a few of them, a few of the better ones, I want to say.
For good reason. But we were a bit sad.
I understand his reasons. I don't necessarily agree with them.
Yeah, we had some really uncomfortable puns in there. I mean, Hymn Reaper was original. Yes. And we still love it. Rest in peace, Hymn Reaper, because but it felt too much like death, and we didn't really want that association.
Yeah.
And
it would feel like we were talking about Christian metal, really.
Yeah.
Look at us.
We're not into that. But someone might be. No judgment.
In which case, I want some of the royalties, but you can have that title.
You can have it.
I liked 2 cents verse. Or like tuppence verse.
Yes.
But verses are kind of...
We had one that went quite far into the selection process, but I realized that as I started to say it too much into the microphone, that it could maybe be heard incorrectly.
And it wasn't a good... Yeah, it just didn't work. If you didn't hear it properly, then you could be quite affronted by it.
Yes.
It was nothing bad.
No.
It was just... Yeah, just one of those things.
If you're really, really curious on what that name was, you should
You
leave
can
a comment
ask,
below, and then we'll see
In
if we
fact,
get.
if you're really curious about the list that we came up with,
Yes.
let us know, and I will.
You know what? We might share
you-
it. Like maybe we'll do like a live Q&A or something like that,
Do you know
and
what
we can
do?
share.
We should do a treasure hunt across several episodes
Mm-hmm.
in which we like mention potential titles that we
Yes.
got, and they've got to collect them all. And
Yes.
if they do, they can get entered into a giveaway and then win something.
Yeah, I like that.
If you like that idea, let us know.
Yeah,
We'll do
let
that.
us know. I thought it was great because we were kind of racking our brain like, what are we going to be called? What are we going to be called? There's a lot in a name. And so Cara just typed in because we have a little text message group. She typed in Hymnpartial.
I had gone to a pun generator because I was tearing my hair out at this point. Every time I came up with something, they were like, we'd floated quite a lot of ideas. I was
Yes.
like, pun generator. And then I was for rhythm, but like rhythm's hard enough to
Yes.
spell to begin with without,
Yeah.
but there were all sorts like immortals and stuff.
Yes. But Hymnpartial actually we like for multiple reasons. We're like, yes, this is great. And one of those reasons is because it's a pun generator from the word impartial, which
That one wasn't on the pun generator.
it wasn't.
No, I was
Okay.
like, oh, impartial. And then I was like, I'll text it to you.
Well,
'cause-
it's a pun off the word impartial,
Yep.
which in some respects, in terms of church music, we kind of are. I think you'll find some people that are very passionate about, we talked about Psalms only, there's some people that say it's only this or it's only that, or like, they'll say that kind of music's okay, but that kind of music is too much. I'm not even going to say what those categories are, but I know what you're thinking. And we know folks who hold those kind of ideas.
if you're thinking it, then you know people that hold
then
those
you know
views.
exactly what we're talking about, and we'll hopefully address those things in future episodes. But we're kind of like, let's talk about what we are saying and who we're saying it to, and let's dig into the actual worship that we're bringing to the Lord when we sing. And so in that regards, we are very impartial. There's many types of genres that we plan to get into, and I think you'd be surprised at what our opinions are on that music. But also, it's kind of like, it's like a play on the word, but also sort of contradictory, because even though we're impartial towards how you should worship with music, we are also quite partial to hymns, which is why we've been, most of our episodes have been on certain hymn songs. And so it really, really worked. So we're going to switch gears quickly because I think we're running out of time a little bit, but just for funsies, what would you say is your favorite hymn?
Can I give you top 10?
You could give me top 2.
Top 2. I have a lot of hymns that I love. Probably can I give you top 3?
Yes.
We're bargaining here. So top 3 would be, in no particular order, Be Still My Soul. I mentioned that one before. That's partly just because it's been there in important parts of my life. So it was there when my gran was very ill. We thought she was going to die. And that was one of the songs that we sang randomly in church. And I was like, this is amazing. It's right what I need right now.
Yeah.
And then I had another friend, he passed away, and we sang it at his funeral. And then, of course, one of my best friends had it at her wedding. She had the tune at her wedding, which was really emotional. And yeah, it's just been, if I'm really upset or anxious or distressed, I will just sing that to myself.
Yeah.
Like, stop it, be still, it's fine.
Oh,
Number 2.
that's lovely. Well, we're out of time. No, just kidding. I'm so kidding. I'm totally kidding. Go ahead.
It's fine. Number 2 is Love That Will Not Let Me Go.
Nice.
I felt really guilty about loving this song because I had been told when I expressed my love for it that it's a sentimental thing. And it was kind of just sort of like poo-pooed at.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. But actually, we're going to talk about it one day and you're going to love it too. It's poetic, but it's not sentimental.
Oh, that's a good song.
And then the last one is And Can It Be? If I'd known about
nice.
that song when I got baptized, it would have been my baptism hymn.
Really?
Yeah.
We
It's
have
just-
to have an episode on that. That'd
It's
be
those
great.
last 2 verses. I'm just like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
What are your favorite hymns?
I don't know if I have hymns prepared, but I have a hymn. It's a hymn I only heard of for the first time maybe about 4 years ago. And it is, I asked the Lord that I might grow. And I have never, at that point, when I first sang it, never sang a song before that was so convicting but caused so much worship. You know, and it's very rare that I can actually even sing that song without getting a little misty because, you know, for those of you who haven't heard it, it's a wonderful song. The premise of it essentially is that there's the Christian and he's singing about how he asked the Lord that, or she asked the Lord that they would grow. And basically it was like, the hymn writer was speaking out of both sides of his mouth because he wanted to grow, but the Lord actually sent him trials, earthly trials, in order to actually help the hymn writer grow and cling to the Lord for all of his joy. But the hymn writer realized that they wanted just their earthly joys. They're like, yeah, I asked the Lord if I could grow, but I just want to, you know, be closer to my earthly things. Horrible synopsis of the song, but it is so very true for me. And I think it's a daily kind of reminder, or like every time I sing it, it's a reminder that God's not done with me. He's not done. There's a lot more for me to do, and there's a lot more that he needs to grow in me. And it's a heart check, I think.
I love that it feels very like Job in the Bible.
Yes.
So he's in the middle of all this affliction. He's like, I want to grow, but why are you so mean to me? And then like in the second half of the hymn, it's kind of God replying and saying, this is why. Yeah. But one of the things I love about it is that it doesn't resolve anything. Like you don't get to the end and it's like, everything's good now. It's just him saying, everything sucks. And God saying, this will teach you in a good way. Mm-hmm. Just be faithful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. So quick one. We're going to be quick on this answer, but what are your hopes for this podcast? You say yours, I'll say mine, and then we will say goodbye because we've been holding our listeners hostage for quite a while now.
Sorry about that.
We just love talking. Like I said, we could talk to each other all day.
This is why I picked Monet as my co-host, because we could just talk all day. So my personal hopes for the podcast are that it helps our listeners to appreciate church music of all kinds more. Mm-hmm. Also that it helps you to think about worship, not just to turn up on a Sunday and pick up your hymn book and recite the lines because it's what we do, but to think about what it is you're singing and to be encouraged to learn more about that sort of thing, and to just for that to help you to participate more in a more full way in worship wherever you are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that 100%. I think if we can build a community of people who are eager and happy to learn more about what they're singing on a Sunday, you know, we've said it a million times during this episode, but we are regular people. And so are most of you. I mean, some of you are way smarter than us. That's not hard to be. But, you know, some of you guys are actually, we know personally historians. We know people who have studied church history and hymnody and all that stuff. And some of the topics, we've gotten some great feedback from those people. But we want to build a community of Christians who actually are eager to learn this stuff, eager to share this stuff. And like Cara was saying, that would actually bring some more joy, some more intentionality to our singing and our worship.
Definitely, yeah.
Alrighty, amen. Well, that wraps up this very long but very fun for us, I hope it was fun for you, episode of Hymnpartial. Make sure you like this video if you like what you saw, and if you have questions for us, please go ahead and put them in the comment section. We really will plan to do some sort of live Q&A at some point in the future, and your questions are very much needed. So hit the like button, hit subscribe button. We will see you next time. I'm Monet Funga.
And I'm Cara Devereaux. The Lord bless and keep you.